Okay, we'll see if this works. Bear with me because Illyria is off at Inspiration House picking some things up and going for a run. And this is the other side of our lovely kitchen. I just realized there's probably stuff on that you probably shouldn't see. That looks good. All right. Okie doke. I have blasted the Discord with the link to this. No idea if this works, so just bear with me as I'm trying to get all of these Kyphi labels put together. This is what they look like. We had a little bit of a printing issue with everything not quite lining up. Possibly partly a printer problem, probably, well, certainly also a template problem, so it is what it is. Right now I've got 50 tins of Lunar Eclipse to package up and do stuff. Oh, cool. Hey, it's actually sort of working. I see you, Karen. Not used to doing this by myself, but we had to sort of split our workforce, and Illyria's off doing one thing, and I'm doing this. But I wanted to make sure that we got in a live stream for you guys. It's going to be kind of boring because I'm just sitting here trying to take the adjusted labels. So the labels look super cool before this, and if you want to bear with me, I can go get what they used to look like, but they don't fit on the template perfectly, and not even really in the ballpark. The template wasn't quite right, might also be printer problems, but long story short, not working as planned. So Abry was fantastic and made some adjustments on the fly. I did some stuff on my end. Illyria ran off to Inspiration House to grab some stuff that was unrelated, and now we're trying to make sure that these turn into these. So, yay. An unexpectedly busy and I guess a little stressful Tuesday. And of course, you know, added stress where it looks like there's a Category 4 hurricane headed toward Abry yet again, because that's just 2020. Okay, so writing on these by hand, and we'll be switching back and forth with glasses, so I may catch things. If there's something that you really want me to talk about, post it over in Discord and I'll catch it. But mostly this is, hi everybody, keep me company while I hand letter and date several, potentially several hundred labels. Fun times. Actually reminds me a little bit of the old days with book tours where we would end up, once we were finished doing the signing where people showed up, the bookstore would always have stacks and stacks of books that they would want us to stay afterwards and then like sign ahead of time for people. Oh, hope you're having a lovely day. It's not as cold here as it was yesterday. Looks like it's going to get warmer again. And I apologize if I'm kind of boring. I am happy with what I ended up writing up, so everybody's going to get this little insert in there. And of course, the ingredients and whatnot will be up on the webpage. But this is the instructions for use. Kyphi is a soft incense that is dense with natural resins, and the pieces may become stuck together over time, especially if exposed to sunlight or heat. If this happens, gently pull them apart. When ready to use, you do not have to burn an entire piece. Instead, pinch off a small portion, especially when you are still finding the right temperature to release the scent. Hello, roommate.
Hello.
There's all the two people over in the YouTube live stream, so if you're feeling shy, no problem.
I'll try not to make a loud noise.
This is just off the cuff. Like, I try to do a patrons chat every Tuesday, and it's mostly just like, hey, everybody, who's got time? Most of them, I mean, like, it was pretty last minute of like, how about 5:30? And then I was like, how about I figure out how this shit works, because I don't have a leader to make it work for me. We usually do it through StreamYard, and so like there's this extra layer of like kind of management with it, but this is just not Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube's pretty much just plug and play.
Yeah, well, and also I can make it so it's just like you need to have the link to get here, so.
Yep. Enjoy!
Seriously, just boring me. Actually, let me see if I can move that back a little bit so you can see me doing stuff. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work. Screw it. I'm also gonna pop into the voice chat. Hopefully that doesn't turn into some sort of weird feedback loop, but also maybe, well, we'll see how long that phone lasts too. My iPhone has hit the point in its little Apple life where Apple chokes its battery and tries to convince me to go get the newest, latest, most expensive model, and fuck them. and again, I am bent over this and writing some stuff out for the Kyphi labels. So if you post a question there and I miss it, yeah, Karen, I do love, like, I love a lot of things about Apple, but that battery thing just is kind of a pain in the butt. I will say that as somebody who did a podcast back in the middle 2000s for like the type of equipment and the amount of money that we had to spend on mixers and microphones and everything else, the fact that you can pretty much do the exact same thing with an iPhone these days is really amazing, and also kind of one of those, necessary evil. But back to what I was saying, if you ask something and I miss it, because I'm looking down, putting stuff on labels, then put some, feel free to pop it up into the Discord, and I am in the voice chat there as well. So, come hang out. It's not a super fancy day. There's also the chance that there will be a haircut in my future. Like, I was committed to the haircut until I discovered that I was probably also going to be recording soon for TV, and now I'm like, oh, but like I can kind of wrangle this, and home haircuts always leave me a little nervous. Shit. And for those who are new, this is what the finished product is going to look like. Illyria was kind enough to package up all of the, a bunch of the lunar eclipse last night, at which point we also realized that we're going to need a lot more tins. And again, it is just me, and there's not a lot going on, but I also wanted to make sure that I had something for people to come and hang out with. I hope your days are not terrible. The news has been kind of stressy. Notice that there's, a gigafire in Northern California that looks pretty terrifying, 1 million acres and then some. The fact that we have added gigafire to our vocabulary for 2020 is kind of on brand for this year. So the goal with Kyphi is to get all the pre-orders packaged up and mailed out either tonight or tomorrow, depending on how the packaging goes and how fast I can fill out all the little stickers. Hello.
This is Storm. There's a question in the chat asking if you can tell us a haunting experience while you label.
Oh, yeah, totally can. Thank you for asking me. And yeah, absolutely thank you for popping in here, because usually I've got Illyria to kind of make all the bits go. Okay, let's see, a haunting experience. There's so many. I actually can tell you one of the first ones where I realized I'd done fucked up. Um, it was November. I think I was still in middle school, and I was with. Uh, I had two best friends in middle school, fifth, sixth, and seventh grade, Kelly Kopp and Laura Betts. And I mean, like we were thick as thieves. We went on. We were all in choir together, and we went on the Washington trip together. And Laura had a little brother named Mark. Mark sometimes tagged along. Well, long story short, we were over at my house in Hinckley, and I think I'd mentioned in a previous live stream that I, at that age, kind of like to experiment on my friends and like tried to see if spirit communication was really real, if it was just people being front loaded and convincing themselves in a kind of mass hysteria way, if like a Ouija board was just idiomotor response or what was going on. And so we're down in the basement of the house I grew up in, which, to be fair, was definitely a haunted house. Like, growing up, the kitchen cabinets would open and close, the chandelier would do a lazy 360, and like my grandmother and her brother always were like, "Don't make a big deal about it. That always happens. It's no big deal. Don't just whatever." Um, so casually haunted house. Never really felt threatened in there. But the basement did feel creepy. A couple of corners of the basement, especially, were a little like even to me. There was like this cubby hole like behind the furnace as you came down the stairs. The door opened so like it would sort of the actual like entrance into the cubby hole. Like you had to bend down into that. It didn't have a door, but like the door to the basement itself would sort of block it a little bit. And I remember, being a kid and having to like go down and get stuff from the where Graham would store all the cans and stuff, and getting down there, the lights to the basement were these old fluorescents. So when you'd flip the light on, like it took a little while for the ballast to work, so it would like not come on right away. And there's that breathless moment when you're standing on the bottom step of the basement, and there's like there's this deep dark cubby hole on the other side of the open door, and you're not sure if the light's actually going to come on, and then it flickers when it comes on. So it was a little intimidating, and this is where I'd come up with like my I'm a bigger monster. Like that was my solution for whatever felt like it was in the cubby. I'm a bigger monster. I will be able to beat it if it came down to it. So that's a little backstory about the basement and some of my interactions with it. Well, we're down there, and I think we're in seventh grade, and like I said, November, and there was just recently snow on the ground, but it started to melt. So it's cold outside, and this ends up being important later. Uh, I've got this Ouija board that I'd made, and we're down there trying to communicate with stuff. And I think that this is the first time where I like legitimately hooked into a spirit, not merely something that was communicating with us, but that like it felt a lot like what will happen when I do investigations, where I won't channel something. I won't let something step into me and like let it talk through me, but I will let them get close enough so I'm kind of like relaying a message, so I hear it and I try to say it in exactly, if not exactly their words, then exactly the way that it feels like it should be said. And it, and again, like we're kids, so it could be all made up, but so this experience happens where we're trying to communicate with stuff, and as the board's spelling things out, I'm feeling this communication that is more than just the herky jerk motion of the board. And there's sort of like that tension on the air, that sort of like weight that the air gets when something's actually happening. And what comes out is this spirit of a Native American woman. She gave the name Running Deer, and there was just sort of a whole tragedy that played out with that. And as that is being relayed, like the space starts to feel just more and more different, alive, like we're being almost crowded. And it's a sensation I'm familiar with now, when you have gotten the attention of spirits in a location. And I think it was Mark Betts who noticed it first. So we're at an old table, and there's bookshelves, and there's a door out, and from where we're sitting, like there's sort of like a fake, like not actually a hallway, but it's like the way that you go past the door, past the bookshelves that cut off half of the basement, and you would get like toward that cubby hole and toward the door that comes down from the house into the basement, and that door is open. What I know is, my back is, I'm kind of like angled to that, but Mark is just staring, and like he looks like he's gonna shit himself. Like he can't quite even speak yet, and he finally manages to like point toward the open basement door, against which there is, a patch of light from upstairs, and there's a shadow. There is what looks like a humanoid shadow from about here up, and you can see the hands, and it's a head and a shoulders and an arm, almost like it's like trying to come out of the door, and it's moving. And at first I looked, I'm like, oh no, that's just a reflection from the sun coming in through the things upstairs, and nobody else was home. Graham and Uncle Jim had run out to the store for something, and I just assumed that we would be able to take care of ourselves for like 15 minutes. Spoiler alert, not a good idea. So there's this shadow just cast on the wall, and I'm trying to like figure out, like, is there something upstairs? Is it the dog? Nope, that's clearly a head, a neck, shoulders. You can see movement, and it's well, Kelly looks, Laura looks, everybody starts to scream. I think Mark loses his shit first, and the end result being that, spirit communication session is over, everybody's done with what they were doing, get up, chairs are pushed back, like Mark's chair tips over, and everybody runs the fuck out of the house. And I'm in my bare feet, and we're all just standing there in socks and bare feet in the snow, not wanting to go back into the house because we're not really sure what the hell that was. So that was one of the first times where I'm like, well, that's probably my fault. And I'm assessing, even at the time, I'm like, does it feel like it's threatening? I don't think it was threatening, but how do I know it was threatening? And how do I know that this thing that I think was talking to me was actually some Native American woman named Running Deer? Doesn't that seem kind of like, I don't know what I believe about any of this, is my little brain ticking along. Mark is pretty much in tears. As a note, he's like super ultra Christian now, and I'm pretty sure I am a reason why he was just like, all of this bad, and went completely the opposite direction. I really don't know about Laura or Kelly. I don't keep contact with them anymore, but I suspect that they don't have great stories about me either. But summoning spirits to spook your friends, maybe not going to like endear them to you for the next 20 or 30 years. Still don't know what it was. And I don't know. What I can say is afterwards I experimented with, could something from the upstairs portion of the house have cast a shadow in that direction? Or could we have cast the shadow? And I, to my limited at the time means of trying to figure that out, didn't seem like there was, it didn't seem like it was us. One of the things that was notable is we froze at a certain point, and it was still moving. So it wasn't us, and it wasn't something from upstairs. So, hello to everybody. Yeah, I mean, it's a party of 7, but I'm here sort of putting this stuff together. I'm not sure when Illyria is due home. I've got the voice chat here open just in case you want to like ask something if I miss it there. And I'm going to stop talking for a couple of minutes to do another page of these as we are packaging up Lunar Eclipse. So, yeah, November of, what year would that have been? 7th grade, so somewhere in the 80s, like 83 maybe? 84? Oh, let me see. I would have been 13 in 86, 12 and 85. So actually probably like 86. I have been, over the years since Haunting Experiences came out, collecting stories from people. I mean, not only my own stuff, but, you know, credible folks who, at a late hour, when it's just one-on-one and they realize that I'm not going to make fun of them for the story that they have to tell, you know, that one experience that they had that they were like, nobody is probably going to believe this, but one of the more recent ones, and this was, I wouldn't even have this story if I hadn't had the reaction I did to what they painted me up with for my gallbladder surgery last year. But I had a bad reaction to it, and was pretty much like solid hives from here down, and hit a point where I was like, I don't think this is normal. This hurts a little bit. It looked like second-degree burns. It was pretty severe. So we went in, and there was this nurse. I jotted her name down somewhere. The way these books work, unless I can find her again and get her to sign a very specific release form, I will have to change her name anyway. But so we got to talking as she's taking pictures of my torso, because she's like, "Wow, that's the most severe reaction I've seen in a while. Is it okay if I take pictures for everybody to see?" And I'm like, "Cool. I'm on TV. No shame." And that led to her asking about what I was on TV for, and I mentioned hunting ghosts, which inevitably goes one of two ways. Oh, ha ha ha, how much of that is fake? Or, I've got a story. Her story was growing up, they had a ghost in their house, and the way her mom had reacted to it, when they were kids, they assumed that mom was just sort of playing along, and mom had named the ghost. And I wrote the name down, but we'll just go with Claire because I don't recall what it was. And so, like, the ghost was like Claire or Mrs. Beasley or something, and it was just, as far as the mom knew, that name was made up. And it was a harmless ghost, like, you know, occasionally things would move that shouldn't have moved, and, you know, you do the usual things in a case like that. You ask, you pretty much, like, go and say, hey, if you took that, put it back, I need it, or, you know, hey, quit messing with the cat. And generally, things will listen. You know, the house is haunted, normal, goes on for years, and then there's this week where somebody who's elderly comes back to town, and they are revisiting places that they had grown up in, and they run into her, and she tells stories about the woman who used to live in their house, and her name was the name that the mom had thought she'd made up, which really struck me. So for me, the moral to that story is, even if you don't realize that you're psychic, if you don't think of yourself as communicating with spirits, we often do, and it usually comes through in unconscious ways. You know, you think you're making up a name for the spirit, but have you checked to see if that's actually somebody who lived in your house, and where did you get that information from if you didn't know it going in? Alright, swig of tea, and now I'm going to do another row of labels. Lunar eclipse. And I really hope my handwriting is good enough for people to be able to reliably read. So one thing will happen when I'm signing books, if it's been like repetitively signing over and over again, it's like my brain disconnects and then I do a typo but with my pen. And I always feel terrible because every once in a while there's somebody who gets a book where I have had to correct the spelling of my own name because I transposed a letter or skipped something. Usually managing to get everybody's names right if they remember to write them down. I mean, as a note, if you are ordering books and you want it written to a specific name, there's a spot on the order where you give us the name. Otherwise, it's just sort of the default of like, I sign it and I say something on it. But we don't ever assume that it's going to be written or personalized specifically to the person who's buying the thing. I just missed whatever that was. Let me see if I can catch it. No, I'd like to see the... Can I see the chat? Yay! Okay, there we go. Is the... Yeah, so I've never recorded with this format, so I don't know what the audio is like. It's weird, like each platform records differently. This is a different iPad, and usually its microphone's pretty good, but the one thing I didn't like about this setup was when I popped in, YouTube did not give me an option to like test the microphone, so I have no idea what it's doing. At least with StreamYard, it gives you this like little backstage area. And on the backstage area, you get to like adjust the picture and adjust the sound. This makes me wonder if I could, I don't know. Figuring out how all of these things work and what works best is kind of a steep learning curve for me. We've got like 3 different types of microphones at this point, in addition to what is automatically built into the phones and the iPads and whatnot. And it's like each one works better under different circumstances. The Jabra is good if I've got like a group of people talking around it. It's a conference mic. Hey Pandora. And the one benefit with that one is it's a Bluetooth connection. If I remembered where I put my AirPods, I'd pop them in for this. Because the mic on those seems to be pretty good. At least I hope it's really good, because I might have recorded with one of Jack Osborne's things that I don't know when it's coming out. Several little spots, but what they asked for me was to do it over on iPad or AirPods, so. And like I said, this is the other side of the kitchen where you can see I own cats because there's cat litter, and there's just the little cabinet of curiosities. We'll probably have to roll more Kyphi. The orders have been coming in quite a lot, and we'll continue to like offer a certain number, and it'll show sold out, and then we'll roll some more. The thing is we don't want to offer it and then like run out, so we'll as we go through the batch, we'll kind of offer bits at a time. So, which actually raises the question, I've been making each batch at a different, like, neat lunar cycle, like the supermoon in May, the lunar eclipse in June. And there is a blue moon this month on salmon. And I'm kind of wondering if I want to start a batch of Kyphi then. And I'm curious what folks think about that. I've got all the stuff to do it. I mean, after whatever next batch I make, I might be running a little bit low on Arabian Myrrh, Wild Tree Ascensions, which was Essentials, which was the place that I was getting most of the frankincense and myrrh and a couple of other things from. The husband and wife team that run it caught COVID. They survived. It kicked their asses and has led to them kind of reassessing like what they do with their company and how much they do with their company. End result for me is they no longer stock Arabian myrrh. They no longer stock all the different types of frankincense. They carry literally one variety, and it is the highest end variety. And honestly, the Royal Hojari frankincense is such a high variety that's meant for like chewing it and like a lot of like homeopathic stuff, that it's honestly kind of I don't think that it's ideal for Kyphi. A lot of the other varieties were much better. So far my favorite in Kyphi has been the variety that they called Mahogany Gold. Fortunately, that one was like middle range price, so like I think like $60 a pound, and I bought several pounds of it, so we'll have enough of that to go for several more things of Kyphi. I think the Arabian Myrrh was like $85 a pound. Like none of this stuff was cheap, but you know, I am in this wonderful position that largely because of all of you guys, I can experiment with it and then pass it along to everybody and sort of hope that I've figured out an affordable amount for it. But so this is what we're looking at for the lunar eclipse. I'm really happy with the way they turned out too. Lunar eclipse is a little bit different, and it is dusted with dragon's blood, so it's got that nice rich sort of ochre color to it. And you'll have this little insert come along where one of the things I suggest to folks is we've rolled things in individual balls, but there's no obligation. It's not necessary to like burn the whole ball. You can pinch off a little bit, and actually what I recommend is take one of the larger ones in the shipment that you get and pinch a small part off, like tiny little bits, to experiment with the temperature, to kind of like get it right, so you don't waste an entire chunk of it. And then the other thing is once you've kind of got that sorted and you know for what you're using, like what's a good temperature to heat it at to release the scent, there's a point where the Kyphi kind of like, it'll kind of crackle and boil and then it'll get real hard. Now it's not incense at that point. I mean, you could chuck it on a charcoal and get a scent out of it, but it won't be the same. But it's not spent. Like you can still use it in like a little spell jar. This particular one, which is for protection, you could crush it and then use a little bit of it as almost like you would brick dust, like as a protective, like across the threshold of your house. Use it in spells and sachets to harness the magic and the energy of it without necessarily continuing to like, worry about it as an incense. Also, you can take it, because it's got a strong permeating scent, even before you burn any of it. You can take the little tin and open it up, and if you've got a space where you have like a bunch of your tools, if you've got like clothes or some like precious items that you kind of want to have this scent and the energies of it permeate, store that with one or two of the pieces of Kyphi, preferably in some containers so that they're not like, because whatever they're on, if it gets even a little bit warm, it will get sticky and they can stain and discolor it. But have one or two of the Kyphi balls in a drawer or in a cabinet, and over time you're going to have that whole cabinet permeated with the smell. Let me check Discord here. See, make sure there's nothing I'm missing. Okay, everything looks good. Oh. Alright, I'm gonna duck down and do another page here. Playing the I need my reading glasses tango, but I'm too lazy to go get them. I'm actually surprised that the cats are completely absent from this. Usually by now, they have decided that they wanted to investigate what we were doing. Okay, let me see if there was anything up here question-wise. Quit hiding the questions. I want to see them. Oop. There we go. Oh, yeah, arts and craft. I've been talking with them about some custom tools. I haven't checked them for the Mur yet, but I will definitely do so. I'm mostly in love with the metal work that they do. And that is a Michigan-based pagan store called Arts, A-R-T-E-S, and Crafts. And really, like, the stuff that they do, Paul's work is fantastic. He makes stangs and athames and a couple of other druidry items that I'm not 100% familiar with, but they're fantastic looking. I hit him up because I think we have a high iron content meteor upstairs, thanks to the fact that Illyria has family members who are astronomers and scientists and whatnot. And I really would love an athame made of meteoric iron, but that is kind of maybe a waste of a meteor because those are really expensive. And yeah, I don't know. It's a thought. I ran the idea past Paul. It is Paul at the store, I hope. And he thinks he'd be able to work with it the same way he would work with pig iron. But that would be really cool. Like in the Bronze Age, if you had iron implements, it's almost always because they were made from meteoric iron. And there was a great deal of magic and power attributed to them because of their origin from the sky. These were like these celestial gifts that came down in a rain of fire. Okay, I got 12, 13, 14. Almost there with what we've already got packaged up. Okay, and one more sheet down. Now I stick it on the things. Yeah, originally these were going to be a little bit fancier than this because there was an additional sticker to go on the bottom. And that was just not to be. Abby did her best to try to like last minute fix everything in the middle of all of this. And because of that, that's the only reason I have things that are here at all and usable. But there was just a little bit too much labor to try to make the impossible happen. Also taught me, these are 2 inches across and the labels are 2 inches, and at the end of I kind of would like a smaller label, so the next batch is probably going to look a little bit different. It will have the same logo, which I'm rather fond of. So it is, of course, this winged scarab with the solar disk. And if you're familiar with the mythology around the winged scarab or the god Khepra in Egyptian lore, Khepra in his form of the scarab beetle. Scarab beetles are dung beetles, so like they roll these balls of dung, and when you see the scarab with the solar disk is equated with that ball of dung. They lay their eggs in the dung, and new scarabs come out of it. So it was a symbol of rebirth. They didn't necessarily understand that the eggs were put in the ball of dung. They just sort of felt that, like, in kind of like the way of the phoenix, the scarab beetle rolls this up and eventually dies and comes back out of it. So it became an allegory for the sun, and how the sun is born at dawn and dies at dusk. But there's language in rolling balls of Kyphi and balls of incense in general that have kind of an echo of the work of the dung beetle to roll this sort of sacred orb of matter through which something is reborn, through which this sacred act occurs. So I kind of like the echo there. And let's be honest, Kyphi, Kapet, whatever you want to call it, it's brown and it's got chunky bits in it, and it does have a certain poo-like appearance, particularly like a bovid dung, or horse hockey, if you've ever seen that. Fortunately, it smells much better. Almost there. And again, if folks are new, what I'm packaging up is the June 2020 vintage of Kyphi, known as Lunar Eclipse, or Protection During the Dark Hours. I've got some material that we'll be writing up and putting up on the website for that, so you can read a little bit about the intent behind it and the ingredients that went into it. I can't tell who all is in the chat here, but wanted to wish Christopher a happy birthday all the way over in Norway. put stickers on all of the ones that we have packaged so far. Oh. But now that my eyes are up here, if you have a question or something, feel free. And also after this, let me know, like, if you had problems with sound, like what was going on with stuff, because that might help me figure out, like, if this particular thing needs adjusted. I need to, like, always have a microphone if I'm using this one, like, yeah, just the usual stuff. Troubleshoot everything. Oh. Wow, it's 6 already. Today was one of those days that hit the ground running and kind of kept tripping the whole way through, but never totally fell on its face, so yay for that at least. There we go. What is the best book I've read recently? Nonfiction. I've plowed through a bunch. So actually, fiction-wise, it's a novella. It's not really long, and it is called Hammers on Bone. It's by Cassandra Caw, and that name might be familiar if you've been following the October drawings that Abri has been doing. Cass is somebody who I ran across on Twitter because every year on her birthday, they do this really cool thing where they just invite people to write microfiction, like little micro stories on Twitter. And it's sort of like a birthday gift to Cassandra, like. And it was just a couple of years ago where that crossed my feed, and I was like, microfiction? I don't know if I'll be good at that, but of course, it's a neat inspiration. So, Cassandra does a whole bunch of different types of writing, but is mostly known for horror. And particularly kind of like eldritch Lovecraftian body horror, so just be aware that there's a lot of tentacles, eyes, and weirdness in this. It's a very slim volume, and Cass does things with language that I am simultaneously in awe and jealous of, like just these brilliant bursts of description, and nothing is wasted. And she often uses English in ways that are brilliant and unexpected. And considering English is her third language, I'm just like, oh, I want to read all the things. Okay, let me pull. There's a message that showed up. Why do these things disappear so fast? There we go. How did I make out with the short story I was writing last month? I got a little stuck, and it's not done yet. I did the thing that I'll do if I'm just beating my head against it, which was I kept opening it up and staring at it for a couple of days and feeling really bad, and then just set it aside, knowing that it will finish. I'll probably get back to it. Well, I'll get back to it when I get back to it. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. It's fiction. My experiences with the Shadowside series, with the editor and some other things, kind of left me in a weird spot for writing fiction. Like, there's a lot of second guessing that goes on now that I didn't deal with before. And some of that is also like, yeah, basically a lot of the industry input I was getting with my writing made me like hyper conscious in a way that wasn't very helpful, and might not have even been good and functional criticism, because I've run it past people since, and folks whose opinions that I very much value. And they're just like, why would they tell you that? And I'm like, I don't know. That's the feedback I got. So I was trying to fix that thing. And they're like, well, that thing wasn't broke. And I'm like, thank you for letting me know. And now there's a little thing in my head that tells me that it's broke every time I'm doing it. So, like, I second guess it and I just end up in a fucking tangle. So I'm trying to get my groove back with fiction and stories. And I'm just not quite there yet. At the same time, there's a global pandemic. We're in 2020. There's a lot of other stressors. So I'm trying to be kind to myself and just let whatever happen happen. As soon as it is finished, I will. What I want to do is read it out loud to folks, and share that. One of the things that I really like with my fiction is like the feel of the words and the rhythm of the words, and this is one that captures a character's voice in a way that like I really really enjoy. And it's just where I got stuck is I'm either done with the story in the next like in just a couple of paragraphs, or there's a few more pages where we get to see a deeper level of one character. And I couldn't quite figure out where I was at, and I wanted to chew on it. So it's not quite done. I'm really happy with what is written though. Um, and yeah, mostly just trying to get out of my own way. Still working on the past life stuff as well in between live streaming and classes and Kyphi making, and frankly just trying to help people get through COVID and an election and because there's a little bit of just stress for everybody in the world. Oh, this is a good question. If I had been at the villa with Shelley and Byron and everybody else on the haunted summer 1816, what story would I have told? Oh, probably something about a monk haunting Newstead Abbey, crying for his skull, for his head. Uh, so this haunted headless monk, because of course, if you know the story, Lord Byron had inherited Newstead Abbey, and as they were doing repairs in the garden, they dug up a skull that belonged to like one of the monks from like way back when. And Byron, being Byron, uh, cleaned it up and sent it into town and had them turn it into a wine goblet, a chalice, in which he inscribed a poem. And so he's got like this upside down skull with a stem handle and everything, very ornate and macabre. And I think a story about that monk haunting Byron, particularly appearing to him while he's in his cups, would have been a really good, fun one to kind of jab at. Because the other thing about all the stories that came out of that is since it was a bunch of friends, and in some cases maybe frenemies, uh, everybody was writing to everybody else. Um, there's some games that you play. Cards Against Humanity is one that's kind of a dead giveaway. Like you play to your audience. So if you know everybody and you know their quirks, the way you win is to kind of play to that. And that's definitely at play with the stories that came out of the Haunted Summer. They're little like let's all tell ghost stories. So some of what Mary Shelley's doing with Frankenstein, for example, is definitely coming out of conversations that happened among all of them. And like John William Polidori's The Vampire. Well, the thing is like Polidori's story of the vampire. The reason there was some argument about. Wait, let's go back. So, 1816, a bunch of friends get together at Villa Diodati off of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. And it is known as the year without a summer because there had been this fantastic volcanic eruption, and there's a ton of ash in the air. And the eruption had happened on the other side of the world, but it affected the weather globally. So here they are in the summer, and it's just rain the whole time. It's gray the whole time. It's colder than usual, and there's just nothing to do. It's tremendous thunderstorms and lightning storms, which makes it not particularly safe to go walking for long periods of time in the mountains anyway. Uh, there's some suggestions that like the fantastic lightning storms that were part of that summer folded into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and the whole idea of galvanism. Uh, but they hit a point where they were bored and decided to have a little storytelling contest. There's every indication that Byron started to write a vampire story, and he had a character Aubrey in it, and a couple of elements that are familiar from the story that John William Polidori later published in 1819. Byron didn't finish his, and he kind of scrapped it. He wasn't happy with it. It certainly seems as if Polidori snapped up the notes and wrote his own little version of the story with Aubrey and with we would pronounce it Lord Ruthven or Riven, and he published it first in, I think the magazine was called The Dark Blue in 1819, and it was originally published under Byron's name, so there's a whole bunch of confusion about it. Next question that I saw pop up was, did I write the lyrics for Blood of Angels? Yes. In the CD, I wrote all the lyrics, and I wrote some of the music, and then William Piotrowski and Joseph Vargo added layers and mixing and some other additional stuff with it. And in most cases, because we wrote, recorded, and mastered that album in 5 days. Mostly up in Billy's bedroom, and in this little recording studio that they kind of cobbled together in his parents' house. And they were really long hours. And one thing I gotta say is Vargo has got at least a decade on me, and that man is just unstoppable. We'd get there at around 11 a.m. I'm dragging ass because it's early for me, and I'd be driving home at 2:33 in the morning, and Vargo would be there before me, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and the thing was that he'd already been up. He had packed orders for Monolith Graphics. He'd gone to the post office, and he was just there raring to go and just nonstop the whole time. I don't even know how to keep up with the guy. But in a lot of the cases of those songs in Blood of Angels, what I came to them with were melodies like was this melody that I would sing out the back window at my house growing up when I was 12 or 13. And just composing lyrics to the moon, and it's the initial lyrics that I wrote, which aren't the lyrics on Blood of Angels, was I sing this sorrowful song, up to the cold and lonely moon. I pray my rescuer to come to me soon, some dear soul to rescue me. I forget the rest of it, but very, very sad, gothic, mopey kid who was just please save me, save me from my lonely existence. I hate where I live. Claudia Conway ends up on TikTok telling us what her parents are up to. I sang sad opera out the back window. Fortunately, the neighbors weren't too close together, but I'm pretty sure it was loud enough for everybody to hear. What other ones? The title track, Blood of Angels, we wrote together, and how that came together was I had lyrics, we are the twilight and we are the dawn, we are the silence when all else is gone. And I was like, what I want is something that is kind of reminiscent of the Conan soundtrack, something that is big and sort of and like just that sort of like epic feel to it. And Joe started playing around on the keyboard, and Billy started playing around with his end on with all the synth sounds and everything on the computer. And I'm finishing up the lyrics as they're like building the different levels of the melody and the harmony and all of it, and just like putting all the sounds together and the feel of it, and they're like queuing up the different voices, because if you hear like the ooh ah stuff, that's actually like a sound bank that goes right into a keyboard. And I think theirs was like the Boston Philharmonic. Um, you pay to just have like all of these things attached to each key of the thing, and you can do. They record individual syllables and different sounds, so you can feasibly like make them even recite Latin if you know what you're doing. But we just went with just sort of like the, a backing vocal chorus, and then everything else is just me. And I would go and I would like compose one line of the main melody, and we'd record that, and then like they'd play that back so that I could hear it, and then I would do a harmony on top of that, and then I would drop down to another octave and do a variation so that they would weave together. And then once we'd had kind of like those pieces, then I would do like this contrapuntal, like way up in the stratosphere soprano bit, and then we would stack all of those sounds together. Yeah, the things that you can do with, like literally, it sounds like we're working with an entire choir and orchestra, and it's William, Billy. He'll forgive me if I call him Billy. Billy on the computer and just queuing up all these different sounds in the sound bank, and Joe working on the keyboards and just picking out the melodies, and then Billy just making magic. Uh, William Piotrowski is a musical prodigy. He most of the Okay, so if you're familiar with Noxarkana's work, I forget exactly. I think Vargo wanted to make it so that Billy had like 15 CDs under his belt before he turned 18. So he started working with Joe on Noxarkana when he was like 14 or 15, and doing all of that music. And like, it's not that, Vargo doesn't also have a musical background, but like the two of them together were just a dream team. And if you realize how young Billy was for all of it, it's astounding. Billy now is in LA, and he does a lot of soundtrack stuff, and he also works with, um, there's a guy, he's mentioned him. I mostly know the anecdotes of him like hanging out at the guy's house and them kind of like doing jam sessions. Panic at the Disco, I think, is the band that he's best known for. Um, but just Billy off doing Billy things and making music with cool people. And Vargo, who is 60 now, I think, and does not look it. Does not look it at all. I could only be so lucky. Let's see, we're at 70 minutes. Salem Hill at Dragon Con. I don't get to see. So at Dragon Con, I managed to miss almost all of the bands. Okay, no, that's good to know. So Pandora is telling us that the hubby's music is Salem Hill. I'll have to look them up. Is he on like CD Baby, Bandcamp, any of those things where I could kind of like poke around and hear some stuff at a distance? Because like DJ Spider is always at Dragon Con trying to get me to like pop in on stuff. And I'll be honest, by the time I've done. So Dragon Con as a presenter, a light year is having like 8 different presentations. And by the time it gets to the evening where I would actually want to go to a party, I'm so wiped out that I really just wander back to my hotel room and kind of do the introvert huddle for a while. It's just 75 to 85,000 people is so much to deal with all in one space. Yeah, Brendan Urie. That's the guy. almost said Yul Brenner, and I'm like, I know that's not the right name. That's not even somebody most people are going to recognize. So yeah, Brendan Urie. Oh, I wanted to see Abney Park that year. I remember them and like all the super cool like things that they did with their guitars and shit. Because people really like just let it all hang out with the concerts there, like doing the live shows. I don't know. I miss it and I don't miss it. Like I always get sick. Like every time I go, like especially once it's as big as Dragon Con. Like I will always end up with the con crud. So that tells me that in the age of COVID, until we have some pretty severe things in place and some very effective vaccines and whatnot in place, big conventions are probably not on the docket for me. Not anytime soon. I mean, on the other hand, like I can talk to everybody, and you get to see my weird kitchen. Dragon Con is held in Atlanta, Georgia, or was, and is usually Labor Day weekend, and it had been going for many, many years. It started off as just sort of like a little fandom convention, and it kind of turned into like the Comic Con of the Southeast. So it was, not just gaming and not just sci-fi fantasy, but, X-Files and horror writers and Walking Dead and superhero stuff, and pretty much if there's a fandom, they had a section for it. The thing is like it used to be in like this big complex of 3 hotels kind of like all chained together, and it got too big for that, so it's this this whole section of downtown Atlanta spread out among, I don't know, by the time it was what 7 different hotels, like that cluster of 3, and then it was at the Westin, and they started to like chunk things up, so like the steampunk and the urban fantasy was over at the Westin, and the horror was over here, and like when your convention gets so big that you're picking which tracks are at which hotel, it's pretty intense. I'm probably going to wrap up here and see about either printing some more of these up or figuring out like what else I need to package. And I want to check on Illyria because she wandered off to go run and pick some stuff up at Inspiration House, and I'm expecting her home fairly soon, but I want to make sure she's okay. She always likes to go do like these really intense runs all by herself. And I hope everybody had a good time. And as much as like this is going to be kind of all over the place, I'll make sure I put a link so that people can access it if they want later. And Kyphi should be going out in the next couple of days. And everybody have a good night. Hang in there. And let me figure out how to turn this thing off. Mute microphone, that doesn't help me at all. Maybe this works. See you, bye.